Hi friends, welcome to tutorial days. In this video, we are going to discuss about React Redux. I will try my best to cover it as much as possible, and also I will try to provide examples with simple to the complex ones so that you can learn this step by step. So the first question is, what is Redux? Redux is a predictable state containers for JS apps. Remember, this Redux is not only for React JS, but this Redux can be used with other JavaScript applications. But in this tutorial, we are going to uh, discuss about React Redux. So, what it is? It is a predictable state container for JS apps, and as you know, that React.js is also a front-end JavaScript applications. So we will use this Redux in React.js. Now the question is, why React Redux? Before going into deep into this React, let's see this illustration. So this is our app component, right? And here is any data. Say there is any data in this app. Now there is this is direct child application, this is child application, and this is subchild. Similarly, this is child, this is subchild, this is subchild, and this is child, this is subchild, and this is further subchild. Okay, so suppose we need to transfer this data in any of the components. So this data, whatever data is stored here in app component, we want to fetch the data from anywhere in the component of this application. So this can be done like this. For example, the data is here, then the data, suppose I need the data here in component L. So what we will have to do, first we have to pass the data to component C, then through props, and then we need to pass the data to component H, and then from H we can pass the data to finally to this L. Here you can see unnecessarily we have to involve component C and component H. So it would be really very good that directly if we would fetch the data from this store or from any component directly to this rather than going through its child component. In React.js, without this Redux or context API, it's not possible to directly access the data from any component from a central place. So there are three solutions. The first one is props drilling. Just I shown you in previous slide that through child to subchild to subchild to subchild. So this way the data can be passed through props, this props, this props, this props, and this is called props drilling. So this is one of the ways, but of course this is not good because if the application is very large, in that case there is problem because suppose there is 20th level of application the child, then unnecessarily we have to pass the data to its child components to reach it finally to the last or destination component. To solve the problem, there is built-in API of React.js, and that is context API. So context API is good, but this one is okay for middle level of application. But if your application is large, then this context API doesn't work or it becomes complex. So the final and the last solution is React Redux. So that is what we are going to discuss about this React Redux in this tutorial. So what is the benefit and how React Redux solves this problem? Suppose this is the data in a central place. There is data in central place at one place. Then this data is transferred to app component, and rather than going to child component directly, the data can be accessed from here. Directly the data can be accessed here. Same way, directly the data can be accessed. That means wherever, in whichever component the data is required, it doesn't have to pass through its child component. Directly it can be accessed from here through a central place that is called in React Redux, it is called store, which we will discuss later in this video. So as you can see, it is really beneficial that it doesn't have to, the data doesn't have to pass through this. For example, to reach the data directly can be accessed from here rather than going here and then here and then here. So this kind of problem is solved by React Redux. That is why this React Redux is popular and it is essential tool for developer. So what are the features of React Redux? The first one is predictable. That means the state can be predicted and maintained very well through this React Redux. And centralized, as I discussed in previous slide, that it is a centralized data, and from one place it can be accessed from any of the components. Also through its plugin, debugging is really very easy, which we will also cover in this tutorial. And it is flexible. That means whenever you want to dynamically add and remove uh, the data, it can be done easily. Now this part is very important, okay, where you will know that how this whole React Redux works and what are the steps involved in this React Redux. So the first one is action. In React Redux, the first thing is action here, and as its name suggests, actions means something will be performed after maybe user click or maybe keyboard click. So this is action. So this is step number one. Remember, this one is very important. So there are 4 steps involved in React Redux. Okay, so this is the first step where this is action, and after action, this is dispatcher. Means this action is dispatched through the dispatcher. And here, the action dispatched by dispatcher is received in reducer. So reducer is the second step where the actual transformation of action is done. That means whatever action is required, this reducer performs the task and a new state is generated. And whatever new state is generated, it is stored in step number 3. That means this is the central place. This store is the central place where all the state is kept here, and from this store the newly generated state is dispatched to different components. So as you can see here, in step number 2, what happens? New state is generated through reducer. So that is step number 2, and step number 3 is store. And from this newly generated state, it is sent to the viewer, to the view component. So this is step number 4. So here you can see, once again let me repeat here. First one with actions, that means suppose I clicked on the mouse and then this action is dispatched through dispatcher, through dispatch method, and reducer is the main actor here. Okay, this reducer transforms the state, the current state, into the new state, and all the new state is stored in this store. And then this store can be accessed in the view, whatever view, in whichever view it will be required, it can be accessed from this store. Sometimes here we require middleware. For example, the data is being called from API, so this middleware will act here, and the data will be fetched from middleware and it will go to dispatcher, and finally it will go to the reducer. Remember, there can be several reducer in one Redux application. So now let's see one by one. So what is action? An action is in Redux is a plain object. What it is? A plain object. If you know JavaScript, then you might be knowing that what is object. Normally it's open from curly braces and closed from curly braces, and there is key value. So this is type and value. Okay. So this is plain JavaScript object. So what is action? It is plain JavaScript object where there is a property called type here. So there will be a type property in action. So for example, let's see this function. So here it will return what is the type. That means when we say that okay, perform the action, when we say do something, then we have to tell here what type of work do you want to do. So we have to specify here the type of work to do the action. And in previous chapter, we had discussed about dispatcher. So how this dispatch works in action. So actions dispatch. So here dispatch is the method. So what is this? Dispatch. This dispatch is the method which is used to dispatch actions to the reducers. Okay. This dispatch method is used to dispatch the actions to the reducers. Guys, I have tried my best to explain you with real time and real life examples so that you can remember this React Redux and it may not be complex for you. So let's see this sugarcane extractor machine. Okay. So what is action here? The action is here to extract the juice from this sugarcane stick, right? This is the action, right? So here the action will be to rotate this, and then it will be put here and sugarcane will be extracted here, right? So the task of extracting is actual and action. To call anywhere the actions we use dispatched, as I have already mentioned and discussed that X to if you want to perform any actions, then we have to dispatch it through dispatch method. Now we are going to talk about here dispatcher, that we are going to perform this action means our goal is to extract the juice from this stick. But how this can be done, how it's possible? There should be a handler. That means when this wheel is rotated, that time the action will be performed. Means action directly cannot be performed, there should be some handler. So this handler is dispatch method. Okay, this handler here, that means this handler helps the actions to perform. That means action single-handedly cannot do anything. It requires the handler. It requires the dispatch method to perform the task. Now let's move ahead. So now we have to discuss about reducer. So what is reducer? States are read-only. Any state in application is read-only or immutable. That means it cannot be changed. So what does reducer do? In Redux, reducer are pure functions. This is very important. It is pure functions that take the current state of the application and an action and then return a new state. So in short, we can say that since states cannot be directly changed, so that is why what does reducer do? Reducer just make a copy of any state. Just make a copy and make modification in these, and finally a new state is generated here. So here you can see the current state, and then the reducer performs the task and a new state is generated here. So now once again let's come back to this. uh, so now let's know more about these reducers. Action and states are interconnected together by a function called reducer. This is very important. These actions and states are interconnected together by a function called reducer. An action is dispatched with a purpose to make changes. The action is dispatched through dispatch method for purpose to make changes, and this changes is made by reducer. This change is caused by reducer. Reducer is the only way to change states in Redux. Now let's once again understand this through this illustration or this image. This is the action right here, and this whole machine, this whole machine is reducer. Okay, this whole machine is reducer. That means its task is to transform these sugarcane sticks into juice, right? That means this is current state. This is current state of the juice. So this machine, with the help of this machine, we can transform it to new state. That means we are extracting the juice and transforming this sugarcane stick into juice. And which means what is helping this? This is being helped by reducer. That means this machine. So remember, the reducer works as a machine which transforms the current state into new state. Now let's check here a code. So what is this? As I have mentioned before, that reducer is nothing but a function. So as you can see, this is function. So in function reducer, we are providing here initial state. That means if we go back here, so this is initial state, right? This is initial state, and then here, so initial state we are providing here, and in action, that means we have to rotate the machine. And here we have to tell that what kind of action will be performed. So here we are saying that there will be name of the action and whatever action will be performed here. And finally the new state, the initial state will be transformed and generated a new state here. So what is this? This reducer is a machine. In local language you can say this reducer is a machine, but in actual this is a function which transforms the initial state into new state. Okay, so you understand this, that what is action and what is dispatch and what is reducer. So this dispatch comes between the action and reducer. Now once again check here. So as I mentioned that this is action, means actual action is being performed here, right? So let's see this. We are going to discuss about this store. Okay, now this sugar cane is put here, and then this reducer machine, that means this reducer function, is extracting the juice, and the juice is being stored in this bucket. Okay, means whatever sugar cane juice is extracted, it is kept in this store. So in React Redux also, whatever new state is generated, it is kept into the store, and from store then it is extracted in different class here. Okay, so what is store? Store is a JavaScript object which can hold the application's state and provide few helper methods to access the state, dispatch actions, and register listeners. The entire state object tree of an application is saved in a single store. So you now understand The store, as its name is suggest, store is for storing the application states, change states. Okay, so how the store is created? Here in React we create store and we import it from Redux. So import to do, then reducers, let store, then create store. Here you can see this reducer is passed here in store, and this reducer actually generates the new state, and it is being stored here. And now this store data can be fetched in any components. Now once again, let's come back to this machine. Action, current state, and then there is juice stored here, right? So how this juice is given to the people? Now this juice is being provided to different people here, right? So these are actually the components here. So the data is being transferred directly to the user. So user cannot, you know, take this. We cannot give this to the user. Current state we cannot give, right? So we change the state here through this reducer, and then the sugarcane juice is stored here. That means the change state is kept here, and this final juice is given to the people. That means the stored data is being given to the final component, to the view. So what is view? View are combinations of active and inactive components. The active components are in charge of the actions. The active components in turn pass down to the props, which the inactive component treat as callback functions. That means there can be two kinds of uh, uh, views here, two kinds of component, active component and inactive component, and sometimes inactive component takes the data from active components. Now let's recap the whole scenario, the whole scene, to understand it better, that how this React Redux works. So this is action, right? And then action is dispatched. So this is step number one. That action is dispatched through dispatch method, and then this action is performed. The type of the action is performed by which? Reducer, right? And whatever data is transformed, means whatever state is changed, it is kept in this storage, that means store. And then whatever newly generated store is kept here, this can be sent here to view component, which is step number 4. So in real life example in code, you will see action, then dispatch, then reducer, then store. So now hope you understand that how the whole scenario works, and in next step we will work on real example with the code. In this section we will create an application here. So D drive, then cd react class. Then let's create a new project, npx create react app redux. Okay, now cd redux, and here we need to install redux. So npm install redux. This library we need to install into our application. In the meantime, let's open here Visual Studio Code. and then we will go to open folder and D my D drive, React classes, React class, then Redux. Okay, start now npm start. In here, let's go to src folder, and first I will show you a very basic example so that step by step you can understand. I'm not going to involve you in complex example. One by one, I will try my best to explain you so that you can grasp, because normally students, normally the new learner gets confused when we provide a complex example. So now let's go to this index.js here, right? So I will import here, import, but first let's understand that here we are going to, okay, let's first import, create store, import, create store from Redux. And if you remember, in previous chapter we had discussed about the first step is action, so this one will be our action. So this is our first step, right? So whatever you have learned through illustration, I'm going to show you with practical example, with a very practical example, very small practical example, so that you can relate whatever you have seen in illustration to the real code. Here will be action const increment equals to, then function here, then return here. And if you remember, I had told you that what is action? Action is a function. Action is nothing but function. As you can see, this is a function which have type, right? So this action is here. Inside this function, we are taking what we are taking. We are taking here object. So what is function? Sorry, what is action? Action is an object which has type. So here we will write type, and then here in capital, let's write here increment. That means we are telling that the action. So what is action? We are telling the type, which kind of action will be performed. We are telling that the type of the action is increment. That means something will get increased. Remember here, you don't need to put here type, you can write here anything. Since this is a convention, people write this type. That is why you don't get confusion. You don't put your in your mind that okay, always this will be type. You can give it any name, but normally the developer, the programmer is related to this, they relate with this name, easily identify this name. That is why generally we provide here the type. But it can this means, that means this is nothing but object where key value pair is provided here. So here we have created one action, that means object where we have defined a type, and that type is increment. So our step number one we have done. Now the next step will be, and also it can be decrement. As I mentioned here, let me show you the illustration. Here you can see there can be many reducer, not only one, right? So here also we are providing here, this is one action. So we will provide here decrement. And I will also show you that there can be more than one reducer. Actually we have not actually gone to the reducer. So I will also show you the reducer here, but we are defining here more than one action. Okay, so there can be more than one action. So decrement, and here the type will be decrement, capital, let's keep it. decrement. Okay, so we have two actions here. The first action is increment and second action is decrement. Now let's go to step number. So our the step number 2 is reducer, right? If you remember, this is your step number 1, right? This is step number 1, and the second step is the reducer, right? So now let's create here the reducer. So now let's create here reducer. So we will write here const uh, counter equals to, this is also a function, and then in here we will provide the initial state. So we will write here state. So initial state value we will give here 0 and then action, and of course this is a function, so we have to provide here arrow. In here we have to say the action type, right? So we will take here switch case, switch, then here action dot type, action dot type, that means which kind of action we want to perform it. So these are the type. Okay, first it will check which type of function it has to perform. So here we will write case, then increment, this one, case increment here, then return state plus 1. So you can see what is this reducer. This reducer is converting the initial state, that means the initial state is 0, and it is mutating, that means it is changing by adding one more, and it will return a new state. Got it? In same way for decrement, case decrement, it will be -1, sorry, -1, and then there can be default, right? Default, then state, means if there is no any change in the state, then it will return the current state, same state. So we have done here with two steps. The first one is action, where we have defined the function name, and then action type. So we have currently two action types here, and then reducer, the reducer will take this action type and make modification, and it will return the state. And then now the third one is store. So here let store equals to create store, and then inside store here we will pass this changed state. We will pass here changed state. So if you run the application now, you will see no any change. If you check here console.log, then you won't see any change. Now we have to subscribe. So we'll write here store dot subscribe, then there is a function here, then console.log, and here there is a method of this store, and the method is store.getState. That means the newly created state can be shown through the get state of, and what is this? This is a method which is part of this store function. Still, if you want to see here, by refreshing, it won't show any result, because finally these actions will have to dispatched, then it will show right here store dot dispatch, store dot dispatched, and then finally what, increment. The action will be dispatched, I have discussed before. So this increment function means action will be dispatched from the store, then it will show. So here, since it's a function, so we have to pass here the function name. Now if you see the result here, then you can see it is 1. That means the state has been changed. That means the state has been changed and it is displaying the result. So guys, you can see I have tried to make it as simple as possible so that you can understand in a single page that how the whole Redux works. But of course, this is a very teeny example. But first, you this is enough to understand that how all the things works. So how, what is this? First one is action. Here we defined here action, okay, and inside action we defined here type, and in the reducer we took here initial state, and then inside the state we passed here the action type, and based on the action type it performed the task, and then it returned a new state, and then that new state is stored here where create inside the store. The new state is stored here, the newly returned store is stored in the store, that means here. But this store will be showing only when, so how, from, if you want to fetch the value from this store, then there is a method called getState. So through this getState you can fetch the value of store. But yes, unless you dispatch this function, that means the action, the actual result will not reflect. So what we have done, we have dispatched this increment action, and finally the result is showing. If you copy this once again, then here you can see I'm pasting this 3 times. So now if you refresh, then you can see guys, it's working perfectly. 1 2 3, that means our Redux functionality is working. I know that this is not a real-time example, but this example is enough to understand that how the action, how the reducer, and how the store works in Redux. So in the next chapter, we will take another example of Redux. And guys, I'm going to take second example, and in this example we will make a separate file for reducer, we will make a separate file for actions and all that. So let's make modification in the existing file. So what we are going to do, let's cut it, this counter and this reducer, and create a folder here, new folder called reducers, reducers. Okay, inside this let's create a file called counter.js, and now inside this let's uh, paste it. Okay, and here let's create another folder called actions, and here inside this we will create a file called index.js, and inside this action file we will copy this here, this increment and decrement, let's cut it here, and then let's paste it here. So now we need to export this, so we will write here export const, and here as well for decrement export const decrement. Okay, that's it in this actions file, and this is our counter, that means a reducer, so we need to export this as well. So export default, not debugger, export default, and then this counter, let's name it counter reducer. Okay, so name it as counter reducer. And now let's go to app.js and let's remove here everything. So not required to remove everything actually. Let's remove it, return up to here. Then let's take here empty selector. So this one is here, this is return, and then here, yes, right. Okay, in here we need to import here, import use selector, use selector from React Redux. Use selector and use dispatch. We are going to import these two from React Redux. And here import increment and decrement. So we have increment and decrement from reduces, actually actions, from actions and index. And then here inside this const counter equals to use selector here, then state, inside this function state here, state dot counter. So first let's call this counter and check. So it says cannot resolve React Redux class src. So here app.js 7, line number 7, line number 7. Okay, so let's do one thing. Control C here and let's install this. npm install save redux. And also let's just remove all these things from here for the timing. We will actually come back here once again. So app.js, this stop here. getting this here. Let's add this. Okay, that problem is not resolved. So what we did, we installed uh, React Redux. npm install React Redux. Okay, so it says that undefined counter. So we will just okay. So increment in this use selected counter and then this counter. So -7, there is something wrong. So let's check. Okay, this one actually is not required. This curly braces. Simply we could have this one also is not required. So now let's check. Okay, Control Shift I. There is counter is not defined. Alright, now inside this reducers we will create a file called uh, index.js. And here import uh, import counter. Actually it will be import counter from counter. And second one, so let's write here import combine reducers from this reducers. For the time being we have only one reducers, but we will later add more reducers, so we can combine more than one reducers here. Then we will write here const all reducers, then function, and then we will write here our reducers name. So for the time being we have only one, so let's put it here, this counter. And now let's go to our this index.js. So here we will import create import create store from Redux, and then here all reducers. This one also we will import here, import uh, all reducers from reducers, and then index, and also import providers from, actually it will be provider, import provider from React Redux. Then const all stores equals to so what we are going to do here, we will call here all reducers. That means we are registering this reducers with our create a store. Actually it will be uh, create stores in like this. Yes, and finally here we will write here app, sorry, provider, and then store. We are creating here store, okay, and then that all stores here. So what we are going to do here, actually we call here this library create store, and all reducers we have called here, and we have called here provider as well. So we are calling here all reducers, and we are storing here all stores, and then the value will be passed here from the stores. So whichever component will be inside app component, this data can be accessed from any of its child component. Since this is the main component, the app components, all component is inside this app component. So now if this provider is available inside this app component, that means its all child component can access this value from this store. So we are getting here it says all reducers imported it, reducers. So where is all reducers? All reducer. Okay, we have not exported this, that's why. So export all reducers, or export default, what default all reducers, and here uh, we don't need this actually, because we don't need curly braces from here. All reducers is enough. Now error line code, and instead of expression line number 4 index.js. Okay, there seems to be a mistake here. It will be equals to combine reducers, and then inside this counter. Oh, okay, that's it. And finally, now you can see the result here. It is showing 0. So we will now add here the code once again. So let me recap it once again before we proceed ahead, so that you can get what we have done so far. First, we have created action. In action, it is very simple. There is increment and decrement, which you have already seen in the first example. There is nothing new in this, right? And now inside reducer, there is counter. This is also same initial state, and then based on the action type, it is either increasing or decreasing, and finally, if there is no increase decrease, then it will take initial state. That's it, and we are exporting it. There is no confusion in this. So the main your confusion might be here, but this is also not matter of confusion, because we have called here the counter, this reducer. Actually, what is this counter? This is reducer, right? So we have called this a reducer, and then we are going to combine reducers. For the time being, we have only one reducers, but still I'm going to use this because I will add one more uh, reducer here. So that's why I've done this. Okay, so suppose you have 1 2 3 4 whatever reducers here you can put here comma separated, and then finally this is all reducers. That's it. And then Here in index.js, we have created here create a store. Then we have called it for reducers here, and then we have called here provider. Through this provider, we can fetch and dispatch and fetch the data. Okay, and here we are providing here store all stores. That means whichever component will be inside app component, this data, this all reducers can be accessed from there. So that's it. Now let's get back to here app component, and here we will add two button in increment and decrement. So let's add here button and then button. So I write here increase, increase, and then let's put under button, say it will say decrease, decrease. And here on click, on click, here we will pass dispatch, but for that we need to call here the dispatch. So we write here dispatch equals to use dispatch, and as you know, this dispatch is used to export the function, right? So here this dispatch we are calling, and then inside this what we are going to do, we are going to call increment function here, and same way we will call here decrement function. So it will be decrease, and here decrement, right? And this is our counter, initial counter 0. Okay, there is some error. There is no need of this curly braces. Actually it will be, there will be simple dispatch like this, then decrement. So let's check now. Dispatch is not defined. Oh, it's not defined. Let's 3 const dispatched. Yes, so now increase. Yes, perfectly. You can see it is increasing, right? And then decrease. The value is increasing and value is decreasing. So let's recap once again. This counter, this one is reducer, this one is combined reducers, means more than one reducers, and then the main thing is here the action. It is very simple. We have just defined the type of the action, and the real task is here create store, all store provider. Then we are calling all reducers here inside the create store, and finally we are passing this store into the provider through provider to all its component inside app component. Now let's create one more reducer. So let's go to reducers here, and then inside this let's create a new file called login logout.js. Okay, and here const login logout equals to this function, and then here, so initial state will be state equals to false, initial state will be false, and then action here, and here switch action dot type, and then, and before that we need to define here inside our actions one more login and logout. Okay, so let's go to actions here and then export here login, export, sorry, export const login. So here will be capital login, and here we are defining two more actions, right? So logout, and here logout. Okay, so same thing, same this action we will call here. So case login, and then here return return true, and then case logout, here return false, and default here default false, return false. Right, okay, so now yes, we have to export this, export default this login logout. And now let's go to index of, let's call it of our users. In here we will call import auth. You can give any name, okay, from login logout. So rather than this login logout, you can give simply small name or auth. So now guys, we have two reducers here, right? The counter and the auth. That's it. Now let's go to app component, and here let's add here login logout functionality. Let's write here h2 login and logout functionality. And then let's take two button here just like this and copy it. So dispatch, and then here and here, yes, we need to call here login and logout, those two actions. And here we will pass inside dispatch login, and then this logout. So let's say here login and then logout. And here as well we need to call const auth equals to use selector, and then state inside this state dot auth. So here we will write quotient auth. So here will be curly braces actually, and then let's put here div you are logged in, and else here simply it will have nothing. Finally, curly braces closed. Okay, now let's go to the browser and check. So this one is increment decrement working perfectly. You can see here increment and decrement is working, and now I will click on login and you can see the state is changing here and say you are logged in, and if I click on here then it is logged out. So if you want, you can also put your message like div you are logged out. So initial state it will say you are logged out. When you click you're logged in, click logged out. So guys, you can see that how through this Redux. And one more thing, you can check here Redux DevTools. Redux. Okay, I'll see that in next chapter. Okay, so in second chapter, actually the third one, you have seen that how you can create more than one here actions, and also how you can create more than one dispatch, sorry, one more than one reducers, and how you can call that into the application. So guys, still if you have not subscribed my channel, then please do that, so that when I upload video you will get notification and video reaches to you first. And in this section I will show you that how you can see the state change with DevTool extension, Redux DevTool extension. So right here from Redux DevTool extension, and go here and then just install this Redux DevTool. I have already installed this, that is why it is showing remove from prom, but in your case you have to install this extension. Once you install this extension, then you need to put here one code. There is no requirement of this, let's delete this, where we have in index.js in src and then index.js, and here we will write a code. The code is this one, window.redux extension DevTool extension and window.redux DevTool extension. That's it. Once you put this code, so where you have to put this code, where we have done all store, means create a store. Okay, after all your reducers, after this comma. Okay, and then now let's go to the browser and then Control Shift I or inspect element, and then here you can see this Redux. So click on this and then let's refresh it, and here you can see the state. There are two keys, the state is 0 and auth false, right? Because this one is 0 and auth currently is false. Now let's make change here, increase. Okay, so you can see the counter is now increased to 1, and also still it's false, the auth is showing false. If you click on login, then you can see the auth is now true. Once again, if I click on logout, then once again it's false. here you can see false, not there actually. So this way you can track live the state change, and you can debug after checking here if your state change is happening or not. So this is very useful tool for tracking and debugging the state and other things. So when you click here reset, then all it will be deleted once again. If you change the state, then it will show you the change log. So guys, that's it in this React Redux. So hope you like this video. If you like, then don't forget to subscribe my channel and also press bell button, and uh, let me know with your valuable comments so that I can improve in future when I'm recording the new video. So thanks for watching. Bye bye.